I want to ask you both because this is, I would say, arguably the gayest Star Wars. It's pretty gay, let's be honest.
But in my world, nerds are gay.
People have told me that it's the gayest Star Wars.
I think that Star Wars is so gay already.
Okay.
We'd be like, look how gay this is.
They're gonna meme the shit out of that.
It would be very easy to dismiss the Acolyte before its first second has aired. That's kind of it. That's the end of the video. Goodbye. No, there's a long way to go. It's an approach I generally discourage, especially for critics. Yes, I understand trends are a thing, and yes, in the vast majority of cases, prejudices against modern media generally, and Disney Star Wars in particular, turn out to be correct about 90% of the time. But an obsessive focus on pre-hating productions has pretty well no chance to convince an audience that isn't already yours. The same dynamic that leads to preemptive condemnation of the latest movie or show works both ways, and if your reputation is that of a vociferous and overeager hater, the great grey blob that is the general audience might be slower to embrace your arguments than they otherwise might have been. There's a reason so many pro-Disney Star Wars commentators are so quick to trot out lines like, "Star Wars fans are impossible to please, you're just the fandom menace, you just hate things for clicks," etc. ad nauseum. No, it's not true, obviously, and these people are but angry, shouty nerds aren't an especially appealing sight, and if you make yourself unappetizing in this way, then the only thing acting against the debasement of beloved properties like Star Wars is the manifest incompetence of those now in charge of beloved properties like Star Wars. With that in mind, I was going to begin by finding something nice to say about the pre-release content around the Acolyte, and for a brief, short time, it was, well, actually, it was still really fucking difficult, but it wasn't impossible. I was going to point, for example, to one part of its premise. Acolyte creator and showrunner Leslie Headland That's very mean. Anyway, as I was saying, Leslie Headland would say, for example, that she had drawn on the strained relationship she has with her semi-estranged sister for inspiration, and in theory, as a premise, on paper, I am all in favor of this sort of approach. Write what you know is pretty much the introductory course to penmanship, after all, and drama of this sort has always been at the core of Star Wars, or at least at the core of what Star Wars used to be. George Lucas himself described it as a family soap opera.
It started here and it went there, and it's all about generations, and it's about, the issues of fathers and sons and grandfathers, and it's a family soap opera. I mean, ultimately, space, we call it space opera, but people don't realize it's actually a soap opera, and it's all about family problems and it's not about spaceships.
Friends, siblings, lovers torn apart by circumstance, though hopefully not all at the same time, is fertile ground for storytelling and an immediately stronger hook than the sterile, loveless fare we've had from the likes of The Book of Boba Fett and Ahsoka in particular, where Star Wars savior Dave Filoni bizarrely went out of his way to friend-zone Ezra Bridger before sending Sabine off on a mad quest to rescue him.
We've been through a lot. Grew up together in this rebellion. We're not really family, but you're like a sister to me.
Boring! Honestly, who betrays potentially the entire future of the galaxy for a guy they don't want to bone? So the Acolyte's premise, by contrast, was encouraging. Likewise, and notwithstanding criticisms about the futility of stasis, which is what all of these prequels and tie-in things seem to be, jumping many hundreds of years back in time to the High Republic period at least means the Skywalker name cannot be traduced any further, while, presumably at least, limiting the show's reliance on tedious fan service and key jangling.
For 800 years have I trained Jedi.
No, be quiet. Like, they've forgotten about you, Yoda. We don't want you in this show. Stop it. Pipe down. There is more space for innovative storytelling in this relatively unknown period of deep galactic history. And the Acolyte then has no crutch to lean on or famous names to hide behind. It won't just slap a weirdly animated Luke Skywalker on an episode in a bid to boost the ratings, and that's a good thing. But in saying all of that, I have already done more positive, productive marketing for the show than the studio that is running it, because Disney itself deployed pretty much every self-defeating trick in its vast arsenal, and a couple of new ones to boot, to put people off watching the show, leaving you wondering whether they actually want to sabotage the franchise. We had Kathleen Kennedy straight off the bat calling fans sexist and complaining that the Star Wars fandom is problematic for no other reason than that it is male. The irony, it seems, has escaped her. This, rather than their rank incompetence, is why women stepping into Star Wars face so much abuse. Even Leslie Headland had to experience it, says Kathy, which is odd since Leslie Headland is particularly famous for not noticing abuse directed at women. I guess Darth Weinstein was so powerful, the dark side of the Force clouded her vision. That nobody ever set out to make Star Wars a specifically male brand, that nobody ever put up signs saying no women allowed, is neither here nor there. And the fact that no male directors, producers or studio executives take to the airwaves to complain that Barbie's fan base is too female, well, that's a discrepancy it's just not fashionable to notice. That there are plenty of organic female Star Wars fans, and that Star Wars has iconic and much-loved female characters, even from the expanded universe, might suggest quite a low barrier to entry for women. And the fact more recent female additions have been criticized primarily for being appallingly characterized and appallingly written could lead one to believe that the issue is with supply, not with demand. But no, because you see, while all of that is absolutely true, it's really just a mask for sexism and racism and bigotry. This is the only reason people dislike child-murdering cry-bully Reva from the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. It has nothing to do with her being a child-murdering cry-bully in a truly abysmal show. And anyway, how dare a predominantly male fanbase react negatively to a rich woman ruining their favorite franchise and blaming them for their sex? That's just fucking sexism. So that's blaming the audience out of the way. Next on the Disney press strategy checklist is actors making cocks of themselves in interviews.
A battle for power. I mean, the best parts about Star Wars is there is no good or evil. It depends on what side you're standing on, truly. You know what I mean? You can look at any angle and see yourself relayed through all the characters, Darth to Luke. You know what I'm saying?
And then doing it again.
Well, Anakin just killed a whole Death Star. How many people died on that?
And then doing it again.
I did get in trouble for this answer at Star Wars Con. I got heat.
Yeah.
And in my mind, it's so funny to me because it literally, as a person who's outside and just a fan coming in, that was what was so beautiful and interesting to me. You know, people have been talking to me online about how Darth Vader is such a bad person. It's very clear, and it's very well established from those actions. But if you can't look and see that Anakin blowing up the Death Star possibly killed millions and millions of people, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this right now.
Yeah, you should just shut up.
Then it's just like,
shut up. I love
that
you.
is,
You
but
should
that
shut
is
up.
the beautiful.
Well, no, look, here's the thing.
Okay.
Actors have never been known for their articulate analysis of the material that they're in, and they shouldn't have to be. But one of the things that you have when you do these junkets, there are publicists there that can help and say, listen, I think you misspoke. Can we take it back? Let's re-record that segment.
Okay.
And it's their job to make sure to protect the actors.
There's the thing I think you can tell that he's trying to do, and this is, again, something that the studio couldn't correct because I think they probably told him to do it, is to draw this moral equivalency point. Because, you know, if you look at the sales pitch for the Acolyte, if you read any of the synopses for it or anything that anyone has ever said about it, what they are always stressing is it's not about good and evil, it's about power and who gets to use it. Clearly, the sales line that they've asked the actors to riff on is this moral gray stuff. It's going to be interesting because it's not just good and evil. And that's what the actor was making his cat-handed attempt to put across in the Death Star point. I don't know that the studio would ever fix that because that seems to have been what they told him to go and say anyway. So he's kind of screwed from both ends. He doesn't know the material, and he's also been given bad material. So now we've insulted the fans and confirmed that nobody involved in this production understands the first thing about Star Wars. Next up in the running order is bribing the usual set of disreputable drones to shill it before launch.
I love a good mystery. I really do. And we've never had one in Star Wars before. I mean, we've had questions that needed answering, and they eventually got answered. But I'm talking like a traditional mystery. And wow, it works so well in Star Wars.
So that's insulting the fans, displaying incompetence, and an endorsement from Grace Randolph. In case that wasn't enough to put you off, we then go and pay the usual pliant old media publications. Whoops, not that one. The usual pliant old media publications to boost the early Rotten Tomatoes score. Oh, fuck, not again. And to tell us such things as the Acolyte will be safe for black people. It will be cooler than the Darth Maul fight from the Phantom Menace. They will complain about men, and then complain about men some more, and then complain about men some more, and then complain about bigots, which really means complaining about men some more. They will promise more women in future, and so on. And then, having attacked the audience, proven their incompetence, bribed morons, bribed old media, done a bit of race baiting, invited unwise comparisons, attacked the audience again, and promised to do even more of all of this in the future, the shiny, brand new, never before tried toy from the bad marketing box was unveiled to much hilarity. They called the show gay.
I want to ask you both because this is, I would say, arguably the gayest Star Wars, I think, by a considerable margin. And are you excited about that? Are you bracing yourself?
Star Wars. Not the
It's pretty gay, let's be honest.
And they called Star Wars gay.
And yet people have told me that it's the gayest Star Wars, and I frankly...
You're offended?
Into it. No.
I think that Star Wars is so gay already.
Okay.
I mean, have you seen the fits?
And they called nerds gay.
Nerds are gay.
Well,
Yeah.
Except the bigoted ones.
Some nerds are very not gay and are very threatened by gay
Well, that's
stuff.
true. But
Yeah.
in my world, nerds are gay.
Okay.
And they called C-3PO gay.
We'd be like, look how gay this is, and then send each other a reference photo.
And are you telling me, with a straight face, that C-3PO is straight?
And they called R2-D2 a lesbian.
They're a couple. That's what I think. But this is more outward.
I think it's canon that R2-D2 is a lesbian.
I mean, I always thought the lesbian was this thing. But, you know, hey-ho, Star Wars has always been home for all colors of the sexual spectrum. You've got the straights, the gays, the furries, the bestiality community, the robosexuals.
You're gonna have to do that thing again later.
Yeah.
The BDSM community, the hentai community, the incest community again.
My son, I have felt him.
Strange that I have not.
And a trans rights activist. It's a broad church. And that was actually, really, genuinely their media strategy. Honestly, at this rate, my video will have a bigger fandom left than Star Wars. I think you're all gay too, but so am I, and I say it with a nicer accent. Anyway, yeah, I guess that leaves us with nothing else to do but get on with it, right? The Gay, a Star Wars story that is also gay. Episode gay. I mean, one is what I meant. I can't say that. The Acolyte, Episode 1, kicks off with another of those divinely uninspired alternatives to the Star Wars text crawl. Rogue One ditched its planned opening crawl entirely to differentiate itself from a mainline saga offering, an approach taken on the small screen by Andor, The Mandalorian, and the Book of Boba Fett, while Solo went for a super erogatory spiel about hyperfuel that we could just as easily have picked up from watching the movie itself, and Ahsoka gave us paragraph after paragraph of red text on a black background because Dave Filoni is a hack who can't write. The Acolyte sits somewhere in between Solo and Ahsoka in content and presentation, and I'm of the opinion that this is probably a bad thing. If you're not going to try and create your own instantly recognizable iconography, which is what the Star Wars opening crawl really amounts to, then you should probably be looking to convey all your essential story information in the story itself, and not just slapping a Cliff Notes summary over a JPEG of some stars, you lazy f***s. Speaking of essential story information, what have we got? 100 years before the rise of the Empire, it is a time of peace. The Jedi Order and the Galactic Republic have prospered for centuries without war, but in the dark corners of the galaxy, a powerful few learn to use the Force in secret. One of them, a lone assassin, risks discovery to seek revenge. Now, I don't propose any sort of deep dive here, because I don't hate you, or more importantly, myself, enough to delve into the depths of the Disney Star Wars comics, but I'm going to take a wild guess and say that there is quite a lot of war and fighting in all these many hundreds of High Republic stories set during what the Acolyte has decided are centuries of peace and tedium. I mean, fuck, in the official Disney canon, there's an event called the Great Hyperspace Disaster that occurred within a century of the Acolyte. There's a group called the Nihil, whom the wiki describes as anarchistic marauders. There's an evil group called the Path of the Open Hand, which sounds like a Will Smith tribute act, who used a creature called a Leveler that preyed on Force sensitives as part of a campaign to wipe out the Jedi and the Republic. None of this sounds like prospering for centuries without war to me. But Disney's attitude to canon has always resembled an angry Palpatine in the Senate chamber, so I suppose we shouldn't be that surprised that the Acolyte is making years of painstaking work redundant in its very first frame. We pan down to a pretty-looking world called Ueda, one of those, to join said assassin, who we know is an assassin because the opening text told us, meaning there's absolutely no mystery at all about who she is and what she's doing, hunting Jedi. Here again, the stupidity and laziness of the first frame returns to haunt the show. What might otherwise have been intriguing and mysterious has been rendered dull and predictable, not only in the immediate but in a general sense. Not only do we already know roughly who this person is and that she is here to kill a Jedi, we also know more than we should about why she's here to kill a Jedi, and at least something of who she's sided with, who the enemy is. And though, yes, there's still a fair bit to learn about the specifics, the show has undercut its own capacity to surprise us. I mean, hell, just imagine an alternative opening with no introductory text, where we join a mysterious woman whose first act in the drama is to meet and unexpectedly and dramatically kill a Jedi. That would be, to exhaust my knowledge of what Americans pretend is sport, a strong opening pitch. And the opening frame hasn't quite exhausted its potential to damage the production. We join our not particularly mysterious woman, who we already know is a lone assassin, who risks discovery to seek revenge. And this gives us certain expectations. Not included in those expectations is that said lone assassin would be so unconcerned about discovery that she walks into a packed bar in broad daylight, takes off her hood, and in front of God knows how many patrons, says this.
Attack me with all your strength.
Fucking oof. But yeah, at least the resident aliens have the proper response. The Jedi our assassin is here to kill is none other than the Matrix's very own Trinity. Carrie-Anne Moss in Star Wars playing a Jedi is a fairly decent prospect. Anyone whose reputation can survive 3 Matrix sequels is a force to be reckoned with, if you'll excuse the pun, and I suspect news of her casting generated at least a little bit of excitement amongst those not predisposed to hate the show. I, for one, was intrigued about what they would do with her and with her character, and hell, she explicitly told us in interviews that her whole family was very excited to learn that she'd got a part in a galaxy far, far away.
You have 3 kids.
I do.
What do they think about mom fighting in Star Wars?
Yeah, they're pretty excited. You know, at this point in my career, it's like if I can thrill my kids, it's exciting for me. I love them so much, so they're really rooting for me, and they're so supportive, and they love Star Wars, so.
A few moments later.
Oh, that's it? But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This not mysterious assassin, who is apparently unafraid of discovery and who we'll later find out is not working alone, which means the opening frame is just lying to us, has seemingly come unarmed, and Trinity initially refuses her invitation to duel because the Jedi do not attack unarmed opponents. No, but they do unarm opponents. Ha 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 ha. The assassin is... Sorry about that, just the Headland Kidnap Squad come to try and take me to Harvey. I dealt with them. The assassin is, we will shortly learn, armed after all. We will come, though, to the show's confused relationship with weapons presently. For now, Assassin mysteriously says that yes, the Jedi do attack unarmed combatants.
Jedi do not attack the unarmed. Yes, you do.
meaning we now have a couple of minor mystery hooks for the assassin and her backstory. She and the Jedi have unfinished business. She is here for revenge. She accuses the Jedi of attacking unarmed people. Given how hard it's going to be to find things to praise about this show, I'm going to make a point of calling them out when I see them, no matter how small they turn out to be. Opening frame aside, this is a quick and efficient exchange posing an important open-ended question that also has implications for the general tone of the show. In just a few words, we've established that the Jedi are not here the morally unvarnished bastions of truth and integrity that they haven't been anyway since the prequels, but never mind. No, this is going to be a more complex story than those, and the show hasn't wasted any time in getting to that point yet, which is creditable. Unfortunately, it's already been incredibly dumb in its setup, and we are only 2 minutes in. Again, this assassin has walked in broad daylight and challenged Trinity in public, which already strains against what we'd naturally expect an assassin to do. We'll find out shortly that the assassin's master does not want her to use weapons to kill Jedi, for reasons I can only describe as a soup of purest fuck. But even if the show stuck rigidly to that rule and found a way to unfuck it, it still wouldn't excuse an assassin attempting an assassination in broad daylight, in public, something she knows not to do when she next tries to off a Jedi. Why not find out where Trinity lives or what hotel she's staying in, and challenge her privately at nighttime? Why not trail her or bait her to a secluded place and do it there? Why not find some clever means of getting her to off herself which does not involve the use of weapons? It's not even as though the show particularly wants to portray this as the naivety of an inexperienced assassin, given we'll very shortly learn that she's been in training for several years. She is proficient in the Force. We see in this opening exchange that she is a highly proficient fighter as well, and when we next see her, she's dumped at least 10 more points into intelligence, ensuring that this ridiculous setup does not repeat. What gives, Leslie? Why is she being so dumb? Anyway, Trinity having refused to fight her, the assassin decides to beat the shit out of Trinity's drinking companions. No, by the way, nothing in the first 2 episodes at least gives us any idea what Trinity was doing in this bar with these people or why. It's just where she is because it's where she is. And this prompts Trinity to engage, but not with a lightsaber. Oh no, we're going hand to hand. In fact, the majority of the fights across these first 2 episodes are hand to hand, in a kind of discount budget version of The Matrix, which is ironic given this show cost more to produce, complete with fancy flips, defying gravity, and all the usual stuff. This is not the first time Disney Plus Star Wars has decided to go in for a bit of Force foo. I don't know where they got the idea from, and I don't like it. There's something innately jarring about seeing Jedi Knights go in for martial arts of this sort. It seems like they're just prolonging fights for the sake of prolonging them when they are demonstrating that they could handily beat their opponents at a moment's notice using their mastery of the Force. Granted, nothing in the Acolyte so far is quite as janky as Darth Vader deploying these tricks in his fight against Reva in Obi-Wan, largely because Vader has always been uniquely non-reliant on speed and lithe athleticism for his power and his fear factor. That was just incredibly dumb.
Come on, stop trying to hit me and hit me!
He toys with Luke in Empire Strikes Back and does not rely on this sort of shithousery. But it's awkward in a more general sense because the Jedi are not supposed to be ninjas. They have never been modeled on arts of this sort, and it adds a whole new set of applications to the Force that simply do not exist outside of these newer shows. If you can use the Force to stop someone's fist, then pretty well any thrown or physical melee weapon is redundant, no? Case in point, in this silly fight scene, Trinity uses the Force to block a thrusting attack with a dagger, because, as mentioned, the assassin is armed after all. More on that presently. But later, Trinity has to use her lightsaber to deflect the same dagger when it's thrown, even though it's thrown by the same arm the Force has already been sufficient to block. Oh look, here's Trinity using the Force to stop someone from falling to their death. Gee, I wonder if this kind of Force suspension would have been incredibly useful in some other pivotal situation in a way that might, I don't know, completely ruin Star Wars for all time. Oh no, it's like Vader using the Force to drag down starships in a way he doesn't do in Empire Strikes Back. If it's supposed to be an extension of the commandment that Jedi only use their lightsabers in defense, never to initiate the fight,
A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense. Never for attack.
Then that entirely misunderstands the point of that instruction. The enemy in this situation is a combatant, is an aggressor, one who has initiated the fight and who is attacking, and by not immediately using a lightsaber, not even to kill necessarily, but to outmatch the unarmed aggressor, Trinity has ensured that a lot more people got severely injured unnecessarily. Trinity eventually does ignite her saber, which occasions this line.
A Jedi doesn't pull her weapon unless prepared to kill.
No? Obi-Wan doesn't kill Zamwazel in Attack of the Clones. He doesn't kill the aggressive chap in the bar in A New Hope. He and Qui-Gon light theirs in a defensive reflex at the opening of The Phantom Menace. Rey uses hers as a fucking glow stick in The Rise of Skywalker. And later in this same episode, a chap we've not yet met just turns his on for the lack of anything else to do in the scene. There have always been plenty of applications for lightsabers besides killing or preparing to kill. Obi-Wan describes them as elegant weapons from a more civilized age, which kind of entails they have a civilizing influence. Again, if Trinity had used hers from the beginning, the fight would never have escalated to this point, because the assassin has no way of countering it, so would be completely outmatched. God damn it. My read of this is that it's a purely expedient thing. We need to have fight scenes, but we can't tip our hand about the Sith being involved until later, can we? So we can't have the assassin using a lightsaber, which would make the fight difficult unless we've invented a silly reason why the Jedi wouldn't use theirs in turn. Thus, dumb Matrix tribute act. But this problem could easily be solved if you chose to make your assassin an assassin, rather than a who starts fights in bars. And by the way, the fact we've now shown the assassin is armed after all and is prepared to use weapons places even more importance on the instruction not to use them, which we haven't yet seen, because absent that, she could have just thrown one of these daggers from a hiding place and avoided the entire exchange, which is going to make it highly ridiculous when that instruction turns out to be, well, highly ridiculous. In fact, no, you know what? I don't think we have a choice. So many actions depend on this instruction, we are just going to have to jump forward and establish it, because otherwise I'm going to have to keep complaining about it. Here is the final scene of The Acolyte Episode 1.
If you attack a Jedi with a weapon, you will fail. Steel or laser are no threat to them. An Acolyte kills without a weapon.
There you have it, folks. The Jedi cannot be killed with weapons. They cannot be killed with steel. That's why the assassin didn't do the sensible thing and use weapons. Now let's jump back to the fight scene where she kills Trinity with a weapon. She even uses fucking steel, for fuck's sake. Oh god, but hey, at least now, having jumped to the end of the episode, we have vital context for the assassin's present tense decisions, right? This is why she doesn't just drop a thermal detonator into the room, or snipe the Jedi as she's walking home, or fuck it, in fact, why am I coming up with these? Let's just ask the expert. Take it away, HK.
Request. First, Master, I would appreciate it if Jedi need to be killed, that you permit me to kill those annoying pseudo-pacifists for you. But if you are determined to do it yourself, then there are many techniques I would suggest. Recitation. First, weapon selection is critical. If I see one more idiot attacking a Jedi with a blaster pistol, then I'll kill them myself. Select grenades, sonic screamers, cluster rockets, and plasma charges. Mines are also effective, since many Jedi will run to meet you in hand-to-hand combat. Silly Jedi. Confession. I do not fully understand their other abilities, but I do know that many of them require that the Jedi know that you are there and can see you. Thus, sniping and using cover are always advantageous. Evaluation. A technique that Revan used frequently was to attack a Jedi indirectly. This method only works if the Jedi is adhering to the self-destructive path of pacifism and sacrifice. Kill their allies or place them in jeopardy. Many Jedi will leave themselves exposed in order to protect another. That is why there are many less Jedi than there were a decade ago. Statement. Overwhelming odds is also a good tactic, Master. There are few Jedi that can long hold their ground against 100 attackers all firing at once, or being turned on by their own troops. But the most effective weapon against Jedi seems to be the erosion of the spirit.
One long, angry line later.
I'm genuinely not sure if this is at all redeemable. Because I was going to suggest that, for example, if the mysterious master was referring more broadly to the Jedi as a concept, as an ideal, and if this were clarified later in such a way that the assassin realized she was mistaken in taking the advice so literally, then maybe? In that the Jedi cannot be killed as a concept, as an ideal by weaponry? But then again, in episode 2, she just leaves a vial of poison on the floor, and a Jedi master voluntarily yeets himself from life, so no, I don't think defeating them in spirit works either. And anyway, we already know lasers and steel are very effective against the Jedi. Not only does Qui-Gon mourn the mortality of Jedi in episode 1, then Order 66 happens. The entire Jedi Order wiped out by steel, lasers, and politics. So no, I'm sticking with my earlier suggestion. This is a rule solely in order that the writers not give the game away to the Jedi too early by having their opponents wield lightsabers. In other words, it is a fucking contrivance. Trinity takes a brief break from prancing around for no discernible reason, instead of winning the fight instantly as she could absolutely inevitably do, to radio in the fact that she is being attacked by an unidentified Force user.
I have an unidentified Force user.
Whom she could have beaten by now but hasn't because reasons. Then we continue. On and on it goes, which becomes less and less forgivable the more your mind realizes how unnecessary it all is, until a brief intermission where Trinity gets a hold of the assassin and pulls her little mask off. Again, having been critical of the concentrated shit smoothie we've had so far, an opportunity for a teeny, tiny bit of praise. Trinity recognizes the assassin.
You, what are you doing here?
I'm here to kill you.
But we get very little information as to, say, why she recognizes her. From where? Trinity never names her. We get enough information for this to be mildly intriguing, but not so much that a forthcoming identity-based twist is made redundant. The dialogue is, of course, workmanlike at best.
What are you doing here?
I'm here to kill you.
Yeah, I think we got that, darling. But we now have the solid beginnings of a serviceable mystery arc. Who is the assassin? Why do they know each other? From whence the vengeance motive? And what did the Jedi do to earn it? Additionally, is the assassin really who Trinity thinks she is? None of this is brilliant, but it is remarkable in a show and a franchise that's otherwise completely incapable of subtlety, and it looks even better when it's set against some of the other writing on evidence in this show, even in this very episode, that's so risibly on the nose you begin to wonder if the same person really wrote the whole thing. Then the seeds of the predictable are sown. The barman stands up and causes a scene. The assassin chucks a knife at him. Trinity uses the Force to stop the flying blade, but while she is distracted, the assassin chucks another hidden dagger at her and she dies. We shall park, for the moment, the fact that episode 2 shows that the Jedi are capable of reading minds, so Trinity should really have seen this all coming. For now, she is just dead. Probably, hopefully even, to return in flashbacks later, but otherwise this would just be a criminal waste of a big-name actor. The assassin then goes to retrieve the dagger she chucked at the barman, and almost kills him too, only to look down and see his little child. It's Sid from Ice Age, he's in this show, cowering at his knee. And so she lets them live. I am absolutely certain that we'll be leveraging this moment later, and it would be cheap to point out that the villain here is a diverse young woman, and so she simply cannot be allowed to be actually evil.
There is no good or evil, it depends on what side you're standing on. This show is truly about that balance of power and balance of good versus evil, and realizing that so much of it, starts at the root.
There is still good in her somewhere. But at the moment, I'm not leveraging this as a criticism. Given what Headland has said about this battle between estranged sisters, it could still be utilized effectively. One on the path to the dark side, the other on the path to the light, each with reason to doubt the other, but also to doubt their own side, neither being fully committed as yet, allowing for character conflict in which both combatants will have their way and their say at various moments. Properly realized, this can be a powerful trope, one that's more complex and narratively dynamic than a straight hero appealing to a tragic, but uncomplicated villain. Having said that, I have no faith at all that the Acolyte will realize it in such a way, but it remains one of the most promising ideas in the entire show, and it's so far avoided falling into the Reaver trap of making the assassin irredeemable. Killing a Jedi with a dubious past is several orders of magnitude less villainous than killing and pickling innocent younglings to get back at the guy who, killed innocent younglings. Oh god, what a terrific character she was. And yeah, before you mention it, Force heal isn't a thing here, and little daggers have higher damage stats than actual lightsabers in Disney Star Wars. That's been confirmed, but let's not complain that a character has actually died from a stab wound for a change. Jumping then past the title slate, we wake up with, well, now who is this? It's actually genuinely quite tricky to judge because I'm now so close to the show and I've read so much of the coverage, the interviews and such, that I'm genuinely not sure how effective this beat is going to be on a general audience. Let me just lay it out for you now and we will see how we get on. So we join seemingly the same person, waking up with a start on a spaceship in a cramped cabin that you too could have booked for a party of 4 for a measly $6,000 if you'd done the decent thing and supported the Galactic Star Cruiser. But you didn't, did you cheap fucks? So now it's closed. Ah, what fickle fans you are. She bids good morning to her little pocket droid called Pip, a mix of iPhone and Omni tool that is so useful it has the potential to completely ruin the plot in every scene in which it's deployed. And she is then called away by an alarm. A co-worker asks her where she was last night and why she hadn't joined them on a Nar Shaddaa pub crawl, and she evades the question.
What I do with my days off is none of your business, Philip.
So, I guess this is a question for you, Premier Chat, or anyone in the comments who watched this show without foreknowledge. How effective is this? Because, of course, this girl, her name is Osha, by the way, which my phone keeps autocorrecting because in the real world it stands for the Occupational Health and Safety Administration out of the US Department of Labor. The Occupational Health and Safety Administration is not, in fact, the same person as the assassin. Her name, as we'll learn later, is May. I guess we'll keep this thematically consistent and call her Fannie Mae. But the show wants us to think, for now at least, that these are the same people. Is that your impression? Putting myself in your mind, I was impressed at how spacious and roomy it was. Oh my god. No, putting myself in your mind, i.e. trying to put myself in the mind of someone who hadn't read all the pre-pub material, I think the little twist does work. Briefly, for the moment at least. Much of the rest of this episode plays on mistaken identity, so the surest measure of its success is how much of the audience fell for the mistaken identity point. My guess is the show does enough to earn this, up until the point it fucks it all up. Waking up in a start at least implies bad dreams, and you can, in your headcanon, connect those to her previous actions. She's being evasive about where she was last night. She looks exactly the same as the assassin, down to the hairstyle, a point to which we shall return. So superficially, it's not a bad little misdirect. I actually don't think it works especially well on a character level, since we have no idea why she's woken up in a start, and her evasiveness to her friend and co-worker simply doesn't recur again in any context. The Occupational Health and Safety Administration is not actually evasive by nature. She's quite honest and forthcoming, to the point of telling people exactly what she thinks, even when it would have been better for her to lie to them. So to the extent the twist is successful, it's successful because it suspends characterization, which is a shame, since I maintain that the idea is creditable. The thing is, later in this episode, the show will establish a kind of psychic dream link between the twins, but its excuse for doing that is that it's run out of time and it has no idea how to actually drive the plot along, whereas if we'd had even momentary flashes of dream sequence replaying the fight we just saw, as the Occupational Health and Safety Administration is waking up, we could have maintained the misdirect and established an important mechanic without breaking her character. This is, I should say, really the show at, or at least near, its best, and here we are still complaining that it's a nice idea that's been badly executed. But at least it's a nice idea, right? That's more than could be said for anything in Boba Fett, or Obi-Wan, or Ahsoka, or Mando Season 3. The Occupational Health and Safety Administration works as a mechanic, a mechanic on a Trade Federation ship. You know it's a Trade Federation ship because that's what they call it, and because it's run by Neimoidians, but these are really the only giveaways. Yeah, sure, we are 100 years before the rise of the Empire, which places us, 75-ish years before the Phantom Menace? But it might have been nice to show some sort of design continuity between the Trade Federation then and now. The outfits are roughly the same, they still like their ridiculously large hats, but unfortunately their ships don't look alike at all. I will again though say the idea is at least creditable. I quite like utilizing an early Trade Federation from a world building perspective. Just a shame there's not going to be much world build out of them. Their task for the day is to fix the ship's shields.
Trade feds never use the shields.
Maybe. That's why they need it repaired.
The deflector shield is too strong.
I guess they learned a few things along the way. Why on earth we'd want to establish that Trade Federation ships on the far edges of the Outer Rim don't bother with shields, I don't know. I guess we're doubling down on that silly opening text, with all its boring peace and prosperity. Its practical use is really just in scene construction, since the script needs an excuse A, to establish that the Occupational Safety and Health Administration is a mechanic, and B, to have her outside the ship so she can see another ship arriving. But I can't help but think there was a simpler and very much cheaper way of doing the same thing. She could have been working on something mechanical inside and then summoned to the bridge, for example, or been on her way to a mechanical job and told by an excited co-worker that a Jedi ship has just docked, either of which would have saved both time and money, which is important, given the budget has ballooned to $180 million and the episodes are only 30 minutes in length. As it is, we have to go on a spacewalk to fix the shield, where more time is wasted by a pretty naff attempt at humor.
Activate the shield immediately.
The mechanics are on it, Captain.
Grease grubbers are disposable. Our cargo is not.
You know, we can hear you. And frankly, I'm hurt because Philip is clearly disposable, but me, on the other hand, come on.
Very funny.
And where the exorbitant budget apparently didn't extend to any consideration of how fire should look on the outside of a starship in a vacuum. Now yeah, it's a small, tiny little thing. We don't expect accurate physics in a science fantasy show, but it does look lazy, doesn't it? It kind of screams, "This is on a soundstage," which is not what you want from a work of immersive fiction. We also get a very perfunctory intrusion of an audio memory as she looks at the cheap silly fire and has a minor bout of PTSD. It's all very paint by numbers stuff. The thing that first came to mind when watching this scene is that bit in Team America where Gary's in the bus being haunted by memories of the gorillas that killed his brother. Because we're now at the stage where parody pays more attention to character work than $180 million budget Star Wars productions. If we were actually minded to establish mechanics, I would probably have made this consistent with the revised dream sequence from earlier. She could look at the fire and have a very brief flashback, just to a frame or two, the implication of all this being that the Force is in some way trying to speak to her, perhaps even that her twin sister is trying to speak to her, prompted by events elsewhere in the galaxy and her blood connection with her twin. We're going to get these scenes later anyway, but without any sort of mechanical setup or thematic through line, which is going to make them seem completely contrived. Whereas if you'd actually linked the waking up, the fire, and the later dream, you'd have a substantially stronger mystery thread. What is all of this? What's she seeing? We assume she's seeing herself, until the revelation that she's not, but we get none of that, so never mind. Oh, and by the way, apropos of nothing, can we just take a couple of seconds to appreciate how awful these Neimoidians look? This is PS2 level stuff. The practical costumes from the Phantom Menace look better, and they were probably cheaper as well. Anyway, a Jedi ship plops out of hyperspace and docks, and we meet Yord, who thinks Anakin blew up the Death Star. And this procedurally generated thing, Anakin's ponytail, Maul's head spikes, Yoda's ears, human face, Catgirl, I guess we'll call her Catgirl, that'll do. They are here looking for the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, a former Jedi, obviously having learned of Trinity's murder earlier. There's a slightly curious exchange where the head Neimoidian tries to deny having any mechanics aboard because the Republic has passed a new law saying that only droids can carry out outer-ship repairs.
She's a mechanic. Freelance out-of-ship repair, she bunks ship to ship.
Why would we have mechanics here?
I don't mind this at all, since it establishes the idea that even back in these early days, the Trade Federation had a very loose relationship with galactic law. The slightly strange bit is that Yord here holds up his hand, seemingly threatening to use the Force on the Neimoidian, prompting the Neimoidian's second-in-command to spill the beans.
The Republic has legislated that only droids may perform outer ship repair.
Sublevel, bunk 23.
Which suggests this is a known threat, and the Neimoidians are scared of it, which rather implies that the Jedi habitually go around using the Force as a psychological weapon, doesn't it? We see them dick about with people's minds a couple of times across these first 2 episodes. It's a more aggressive, even oppressive, and expansive use of the Force compared to pretty much everything we see later in the timeline, where a subtle and non-menacing mind trick is usually enough to get the job done. The Acolyte seems to conceive of the Jedi at this point in galactic history as a kind of space police force, which I don't particularly object to. Seems like a fairly natural role for them, but then it goes one further than that, dropping in several hints here and there that the Jedi habitually abuse their position of authority, which would amount to a change in their moral character even when the point of comparison is the prequels. In the prequels, they are so afraid of being seen to overstep their bounds that they don't move against Palpatine until it is far, far too late.
If he does not give up his emergency powers after the destruction of Grievous, then he should be removed from office.
To a dark place this line of thought will carry us. Great care we must take.
There is a difference between high-minded, arrogant complacency, which is the prequel's characterization of the Jedi as a faction, and abusive, controlling arrogance, which moments like this suggest. Yord is not otherwise characterized as a particularly nasty or aggressive person, at least in the first 2 episodes, which bolsters the point that this is common rather than personal practice, and it's a very, very tricky line to toe, showing a complexity, even a darkness to the Jedi that doesn't transgress their later depictions and undermine for the sake of undermining their moral stature. And this show is written by Leslie Headland. It's like asking a clown to cross a tightrope, blindfolded, in a storm. Beans having been spilled, they are off to meet the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, who greets Yord like an old friend. Because they are old friends, because she used to be a Jedi.
You finally passed your trials.
I made night.
Never thought I would see the day.
This is the point at which the audience begins to get clued in that some sort of misdirect is afoot, because her personality and demeanor here is not only pleasant but sincere. She's so very different from the assassin that you struggle to believe they could be the same person. The problem is, I'm not sure this is the moment the show itself would pick for you to make that realization. It feels a bit too early. Too much of what follows still rests on confusion, whereas I'm pretty sure anyone paying attention is fairly clear in their own mind already that the Occupational Safety and Health Administration is not the assassin, that somehow these are different people. The Jedi think they are the same person, of course. This in turn poses a couple of problems. You'd think, for one thing, that a Trade Federation ship would have some means of logging incoming and outgoing vessels. We know her co-workers went off to Nar Shaddaa last night, and we know, and they would attest, that she did not go with them. But if that was the only ship that departed that night, and the Occupational Safety and Health Administration wasn't on it, then 5 minutes investigation by the Jedi would be enough to at least suggest she is not the suspect. Additionally, this show is going to go on to completely ditch the concept that hyperspace travel takes any time at all, which is something I've complained about in relation to other shows and will have ample cause to complain about later in this very episode. But for this scene to play out the way it does, the following has to take place within the span of just a few hours. Number 1. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration goes from this ship on the far outer rim to Ueda, fights and kills Trinity, gets all the way back, and goes to bed. Number 2, the Jedi follow up Trinity's message. They get from Coruscant to Ueda. They investigate, meet witnesses, track down Occupational Safety and Health Administration, learn who she works for, learn what ship she is on, learn where that ship is. Number 3, Jedi must get from Ueda to this ship on the far outer rim to meet the Occupational Safety and Health Administration mere minutes after she has woken up. the show isn't so much being hazy about the concept of time as it is ditching it entirely. Otherwise, it'd have to deal with a constraint that it can't seem to fit into the story it wants to tell. This means that any attempt it might make in later episodes to establish a ticking clock will be futile, since we already know that people can insta-hop around the galaxy if the script requires it. It's actually not impossible to work a time constraint into the script, given we know the Occupational Safety and Health Administration is actually innocent, so slight discrepancies between facts and evidence can serve a narrative function. If all the evidence available to Yord tells him Occupational Safety and Health Administration is the assassin, and maybe he could say show her a holo recording from the bar to visualize it, as well as dragging in the bartender as a witness, he pops up to serve this function in a couple of minutes anyway, then Occupational Safety and Health Administration throwing back that she couldn't possibly have done all of that in the time that elapsed might give Yord pause for thought. But since what we get of his character in these first episodes is that he's a young and inexperienced Jedi Knight who's nonetheless an orthodox believer who follows rules and procedure to the letter, we'd get to see him placing those rules and procedures over his personal friendship with Occupational Safety and Health Administration and his doubts about the story when he insists on arresting her anyway. In this altered scene, Occupational Safety and Health Administration would actually act as if she's a sentient character. We'd have some regard for the actual investigation part of this murder mystery, and we'd learn something about who Yord is and how he thinks. He could point out Occupational Safety and Health Administration matches the description and she has no alibi because she didn't join her co-workers at Nar Shaddaa, implying he'd at least spoken to them in the course of the investigation. And to the point about the Trade Federation ship logging outgoing vessels, the previous scene established they are not great rule takers anyway, so it wouldn't be unbelievable if this were leveraged to showcase their shoddy record keeping. The problem, in other words, is that the mystery is currently in the meta realm, addressing the audience, not anchored in the story itself, because the Jedi don't do a single thing to address it, never mind to unravel it. They're just here to pick her up because that's what the script needs them to do. They believe she is guilty, they are not investigating the crime. And no one, accuser or accused, actually thinks to mention or interrogate the evidence. Oh, and there's also one really big problem, which is that if we establish that the Jedi can mind read other Force sensitives, then the investigation is redundant anyway, because they could just look into her mind and find out that she's innocent. But I'm sure it's not going to do something that fucking dumb, is it?
You couldn't tell me who he is even if you wanted to.
Get out of my head, Jedi.
There is precisely one nice-ish beat in this early exchange. Occupational Safety and Health Administration is friendly and chummy, and she's happy to see Yord again, not realizing yet what he's here for or why. But when she goes to take Pip out of her pocket, she spots him reflexively reaching for his lightsaber, which is her first indication that something is very wrong here, albeit it's only her first indication because she isn't really a sentient thinking person and hasn't properly asked why any Jedi Knight should be all the way out here looking for her specifically. And then something truly horrific occurs. I've been pointing out all these missed opportunities for character beats and such, really to show how easily this fucking shit can be avoided. Roll it. Roll the fucking tape. Do they still use tapes? I don't think they do. Roll whatever you've got.
So how long have you been a mechanic?
Since I left the Order, so 6 years.
Dangerous job.
It has its perks. Look, I was trained to be a Jedi. When that didn't pan out, those skills aren't exactly transferable. I needed a paycheck.
When did you join the Order?
When I was 8. Yord knows all of this.
A major concern about admitting you to the Order was your age.
And the fact that you were mourning.
My circumstances were unique, but the Jedi Council made their decision.
You lost your entire family. Your mothers, your sister. Your village all died in the fire before Master Soul brought you into the Jedi. Your training was difficult, to say the least. Attachments to those we have lost are the most difficult to let go.
So why are you here?
Oh god, fuck. We're going to park the you lost your mother's plural bit, because I gather we're going to have plenty of opportunity to complain about that in later episodes. For now, this is just a sin, and frankly, if God had spent more time smiting bad writers than he wasted on the gays of Sodom, we'd all be living in a much happier world. It is absolutely needless. It is unforgivable. Even the script knows that it's needless. That's why it tried to recognize the problem by having Occupational Safety and Health Administration point out that Yord already knows all of the information she is here relaying. But Leslie, pointing out a problem does not make that problem go away. I'm going to spend hours pointing out the many problems of you, and you're still going to go on to get many, many more jobs after this, probably.
And the reality is that you can do it. Like, you just have to have the confidence to walk in there and pretend like you know how to do it.
Yord does already know this. Moreover, the entire Jedi Order already knows this. They keep meticulous records. It's all documented. The only people who don't already know it are the audience. But the audience are not in this scene. The audience are watching the scene. It's writing advice 101, folks. Characters need diegetic reasons to talk to each other, and you are not that reason. You cannot just have characters reading out their character sheet bios. This isn't a fucking Zack Snyder film. Oh, it's appalling. We've already had many opportunities to convey pieces of this backstory diegetically. I've been pointing them out, and we'll have plenty more opportunities later in this very episode. After all, we are shortly to spend time with Occupational Safety and Health Administration's old master, Master Squid Game, and he has a new younger apprentice. He still misses Occupational Safety and Health Administration, he still has attachments to her, and he's minded to take her side for all of the couple of minutes where her guilt or innocence is still in question. Were his new younger apprentice to feel and be visibly a bit put out at her master pining for his old apprentice, whom she has never met, perhaps resulting in feelings of inadequacy on her part, then we would have a perfectly natural excuse to impart some of this background in dialogue, as Master Squid Game would have cause to explain it to an interested but ignorant third party. There is no reason at all for these characters in this scene to be expositing things everybody in the room already knows. You might as well honestly just break the fourth wall at this point and have Occupational Safety and Health Administration tell the audience exactly who she is and what her motives are. Jesus fucking Christ, people get paid to write this shit. We could have just skipped it, saved ourselves the time. Catgirl leaves and comes back in with the bartender who identifies Occupational Safety and Health Administration as the assassin.
That's her! She killed the Jedi and ruined my bar.
Now, calm down, Skeeter. They ain't hurting nobody.
That's all we needed to happen here. Now, I'm going to invite you to take a trip back in time to a couple of minutes ago where we saw the Jedi ship exiting hyperspace. Notice what you do not see here. Look, there's one ship. It's the Jedi ship. You're not seeing a second ship, though, are you? There's no, prison ship. After all, why would there be a generic prison ship if you've come to arrest an ex-Jedi suspected of murdering a Jedi Master, someone you have reason to believe still has Force capabilities? Because after all, Trinity radioed in that she was being attacked by a Force user.
I have an unidentified Force user.
We will get a scene in a few minutes' time where the Jedi back on Coruscant worry that news of this assassination getting out and news of the suspect being a former Jedi would be very bad for the Jedi, reputationally and politically.
If it were to become public that a former Jedi killed one of our own,
our political enemies could use it against us.
They dispatched Jedi out here to pick her up. They didn't send normal security guards, so they've already accepted that this is a special case with a uniquely valuable and dangerous suspect. And the two Jedi who've come to pick her up are heading back to Coruscant themselves straight after this anyway, so naturally there's no generic unmanned prison ship arriving with a Jedi ship, because putting her on one of those would act against literally everything the show has set up so far. Oh, but fuck, wait, no, it's such a terrible idea that it's absolutely something we're going to run with. Otherwise, KK would fire us for creative differences. So, yeah, at some point, off-screen, a second ship has arrived. A prison ship, one manned entirely by droids, solely in order that things can go predictably wrong and Occupational Safety and Health Administration can wind up escaping, only to be immediately captured again with nothing of substance happening in the interim, making the whole thing an embarrassingly stupid waste of everybody's time. Before we get to that nonsense though, we hop away to Coruscant, and just in case you're a moron and you didn't know what Coruscant is, the show helpfully gives us a little title card. Look, moron, this is Coruscant. Hey, moron! This is Coruscant. Do you know what that is? Here we meet Lee Jong-jae's Jedi Master Squid Game, who I actually like quite a lot. He's one of the few people not phoning it in. He took the trouble to learn English for this role, unlike Leslie Headland. He learns a whole new language just to speak the terrible lines she gives him. But he does do pretty good things with what he's given, and his character, for the moment at least, resembles, well, a character, in that he has attachments, motives, and values. The script will make him stupid from time to time, but the script makes everybody stupid, so it's not his fault. We meet him talking bollocks about the Force to some younglings.
Close your eyes. Your eyes can deceive you. We must not trust them.
Ciągi faculdade opora geodokakise. Demote que caça, do bonielis de otto. Chai con kunta chichai.
But his lesson is interrupted by the entrance of the showrunner's wife. Yes, this here is Leslie Headland's green bean. For some reason, she uses the Force to open the doors, which seems a bit dumb. There's probably some sort of equal opportunities lawsuit to be filed there if non-Force users can't gain equitable employment in the Jedi Temple. And because these are both new characters and because Leslie Headland can't write for shit, we of course have to put up with them prefacing every sentence with establishment stuff.
So, my dear friend, how lucky these younglings are to have such a compassionate teacher.
I am the fortunate one to be taught by them.
I remember when you were that small. You were so shy. I come with news. You and Master Endara were friends.
Yes. I was sad to hear she came to a violent death.
We have a suspect in custody. An old Padawan of yours, Osha Anasea. I see I have underestimated your attachment to her.
She was a devoted Padawan. I see no reason for her to kill Indara.
The evidence against her is strong.
Liar!
Indara and I saved her from a terrible fire on Brandok.
I remember.
She saw us as her protectors. There must be some mistake.
Oh, it's all so much fucking clunk. Green Bean and Squid Game both, presumably, live and work in the Jedi Temple. They're not reacquainting after a long time apart. We don't need to be told they are dear friends, we can be shown that in their mannerisms. We don't need to reminisce about a young Squid Game, it is not relevant. And if both these characters know the background, they don't need to tell each other the background. No, once again, having one of them say, "I remember," is not an excuse to write as if they don't remember, Leslie. You could have Green Bean walk in looking uncomfortable and disquieted. Have Squid Game display affectionate concern, thereby showing us that they are friends. Have Green Bean say, "We've picked up a suspect in the murder case," because both of them know about the murder, and we can then infer from this that they knew/were friends with Trinity. Then have Green Bean say, "It's your old Padawan, Occupational Safety and Health Administration," which prompts Squid Game's disbelief at the news. You show, you don't tell. Stop speaking for the audience's benefit. The audience is smarter than you think. At this point, the audience is almost certainly far smarter than you, Leslie. They are thinking in the first place. Green Bean then drops the line,
If it were to become public that a former Jedi killed one of our own.
Our political enemies could use it against us.
But okay, yes. Exactly. So why have you dumped her on a generic prison ship when the Jedi could have taken her back to Coruscant with them? And who exactly are these political enemies? Did not the opening frame tell us that the Jedi and the Republic have flourished in centuries of peace? Don't get me wrong, it's probably for the best that it's not true, but if it's not true, why tell the audience that it is true? Green Bean then tells us that discretion is important. She also says it is important that they make an example of this case.
Discretion is important. Our justice swift, an example made.
And I'm thinking, well, which is it? Discretion or making an example? Examples aren't discreet, you moldy cactus. Squid Game says he supports Green Bean in this self-contradicting path, but he is clearly conflicted. Squid Game can act, you see. It's one of the reasons I like him. And then we jump back to the dumb prison ship so more dumb things can dumb happen. It is, as mentioned, an unmanned prison ship, piloted exclusively by droids, with about one droid wandering around as security. Occupational Safety and Health Administration is in one cell on her own. In the next cell is a man with a facehugger on his mouth. In another cell is this weird cyborg-looking motherfucker. And in another cell is a band of miscreants plotting an escape. And by plotting an escape, I mean talking very loudly about their imminent escape.
We're planning an escape. You win?
Which involves taking out the droids that run the ship and then stealing the ship's escape pods. I'm sitting here thinking, but wait, if you've taken out the droids that run the ship, why not just take the ship? A ship is better than an escape pod. But if they were to do that eminently sensible thing, then I guess the rest of the episode wouldn't work and that would be sad. So their plan is indeed to take control of the ship and then to abandon it for no reason. Occupational Safety and Health Administration asks what the facehugger is doing on the man in the next cell. She is explicitly told that it is something they use on especially violent prisoners. It keeps them subdued by doing weird psychic things to their minds.
Parasite used to subdue violent criminals.
Is it hurting him?
No way, he's having a great time.
It does weird stuff to your brain.
I will again point out that this show frequently displays Jedi doing things to people's minds, and indeed Squid Game will quiet this same violent prisoner's mind instantly with the Force later in this same episode, which forces me to reiterate, why are there no Jedi on this now very important prison ship? Why, moreover, would the Republic use droid-controlled prison ships to take prisoners from a trade federation ship that uses human labor, when in the span of just a few decades, those positions will have been completely reversed? But that's world-building nonsense. The Acolyte hasn't yet graduated to world-building. It's still struggling to get past basic plot. The prisoners have somehow learned that Occupational Safety and Health Administration is suspected of killing a Jedi.
Is it true you killed a Jedi?
No.
Which kind of puts paid to Green Bean's hopes for secrecy, doesn't it? And they ask her if she wants in on their escape plan. She says no, because she has faith in the Jedi.
You'd rather leave your fate to the Jedi.
Yes. I have faith in the Jedi.
And this, I think, is the moment the script wants us to realize, or to by now have realized, that Occupational Safety and Health Administration is not the assassin. It might have shot its wad a bit too early, but again, I'm a bit too close to the pre-coverage, so I am not best placed to judge. The absolute final you can't possibly miss it indication is when the ship begins to crash and she saves the prisoner next door, the violent one, by taking the facehugger off.
I think you fried his brain with that machine.
It's supposed to be a save the cat moment, or, in this case, save the guy you've been explicitly told is violent and be very surprised that he is indeed violent moment. But we'll get there shortly. This next sequence is probably the most confusing of all the sequences in the episodes, in that I have now seen it 3 times and I still can't quite figure out who the fuck thought this was a good plan. The plotters ask if Occupational Safety and Health Administration wants to escape with them. She says no. One of the plotters then gives this little signal to a weird cyborg prisoner a couple of cells over, and his little eye bar glows blue. This seemingly triggers the droids piloting the ship to transform into chairs, which drops the ship out of hyperspace into an asteroid field around a planet. One of the other plotters uses his hentai tentacle that exists on his head to grab the ship's one security droid and behead it. Then they use its arm to unlock their cell, but they leave the Occupational Safety and Health Administration behind because she didn't want to join their plot. They do a "can you give me a hand" gag.
Can you give me a hand? Bye-bye, Jedi killer!
Please laugh. And they hop in an escape pod and leave. Meanwhile, the ship keeps bouncing between asteroids, and one of the asteroids bumps it in such a way that the storage lockers open and Pip falls out of it, but it's just out of reach. And even though she was a Jedi just a few years ago, Occupational Safety and Health Administration has completely forgotten how to use the Force, so she can't reach it. Then another asteroid bumps the ship, and Pip slides into reach anyway, and because Pip's power is that it can do anything the plot needs it to do at any given moment, she uses it to get her own cell door open. She saves the violent cat, but he pushes her away and steals the last escape pod, leaving her stranded. Then she straps herself against a pole and waits while the ship enters the atmosphere and crashes. The end. Fucking okay. Let's rewind. So this prison ship run by droids does not run any sort of checks on the prisoners in its cells to screen out, for example, cyborgs that can hack droids? Nor does it scan for hentai tentacles because, if they hadn't allowed these obvious threats into their droid-controlled prison ship, the prisoners couldn't have escaped. The droids piloting the ship have absolutely no countermeasures or protections at all against cyber hackers, even though cyber hacking, if it were a thing in the Star Wars universe, would have made the entirety of the Phantom Menace and most of Attack of the Clones and a lot of Revenge of the Sith completely redundant. This one cyborg prisoner could have taken out the entire Trade Federation army single-handedly and saved many Gungan lives, so I guess we should be thankful that nobody had thought of him yet. The prisoners spring this plan with absolutely no idea where in space they happen to be, meaning it is astronomically fantastic that they just happen to drop out of hyperspace right next to a planet. Remember when Star Wars kinda cared about the mechanics of hyperspace?
Traveling through hyperspace ain't like dust and crops, boy. Without precise calculations, we'd fly right through a star or bounce too close to a supernova and that'd end your trip real quick, wouldn't it?
Despite it being astronomically unlikely that they just happen to drop out of hyperspace next to a planet, because space, as the Hitchhiker's Guide says, space is big. Really big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you may think it's a long way down the road to the chemists, but that's just peanuts to space. Listen, despite that, it then becomes cosmically lucky that the asteroid belt they happen to drop into doesn't wipe the ship out instantly. After all, what if they dropped out of hyperspace in an asteroid? What if the first one they hit was the size of the giant worm one in Empire Strikes Back? They'd all be dead. So that's pretty damn lucky. There is a grand total of 1 security guard on the ship. That is fucking dumb. The escape pods unlock in the event of a security breach, which is really fucking dumb. Occupational Safety and Health Administration would have been stranded in her cell because she can't use the Force at all, even though she was a Jedi a few years ago, which is dumb. But she gets a hold of Pip anyway because the asteroid helps her out, which is dumb. She instantly knows exactly where to stick Pip to get the cell door open, which is dumb, even if she is a mechanic. But she doesn't think to drag the mad cat into the last escape pod, which is dumb. So she takes off the facehugger, which is dumb, because she knows he is violent. And even though he's mad and he's literally been in some sort of psychic dream state until 5 nanoseconds ago, he instantly knows to run for the last escape pod and how to use it, which is dumb. She doesn't think it might be worth trying to fly the ship, which I guess is fine, because it's damaged and maybe she doesn't know how. But the prisoners never planned on stealing the ship in the first place, which is dumb. She doesn't think to reactivate the droid pilots, even though she is a mechanic and this is the sort of thing she would know how to do. So that is dumb, but she straps herself to a pole and somehow survives an unplanned re-entry into the atmosphere, making it very lucky the ship didn't burn up in Atmo or hit the ground too steeply or crash into a cliff or a mountain or anything that would have turned her bones to jelly on impact, which is very fucking dumb. And all of this happened because the Jedi did not take this incredibly important prisoner back to Coruscant with them. Dumb. Dumbness. Dumb all the way. It's all dumb. Dumb times 1,000 million. Dumb all the way dumb. Say, you know what might have been better? We ditched the world's most breakable prison ship sequence entirely. The Jedi go to take her back to Coruscant themselves, but en route, they encounter a distress signal that they are mandated to investigate. Yes, I know it's the cheap sci-fi excuse for adventure, but based on what we've just seen, I would say cheap is good enough. The Jedi ship drops out of hyperspace either to find some trader ship in battle with some pirates or marauders, or else it drops into the middle of a debris field caused by a ship having been destroyed by some pirates or marauders. Maybe it's a trap those pirates or marauders have left. Their ship takes damage and makes an uncontrolled descent to the planet's surface where it crashes. Occupational Safety and Health Administration wakes up first, and she could escape, but rather than saving the mad prisoner on the ship, instead we swap that beat for her dragging the 2 Jedi out of their ship before it, topples off a cliff or something. She saves Yord and Catgirl, and she drags them to a nearby cave where they can wait to be rescued. captured. Master Squid Game and his new apprentice fly off to rescue them, which is what's about to happen anyway. But by the time he's arrived, Yord is now convinced of Occupational Safety and Health Administration's innocence, which shows that though he is a rigid stickler for the rules, he is not completely dense, and he recognizes that she could have run off, but she didn't. She stuck around and she saved his life. Then the story proceeds. I always have to emphasize this point when I do these little rewrite sections. I pull this shit together on the fly. I'm not a bad writer. Well, either that or Ken Levine is too polite to fire me. I can, but I'd be the first to admit I still have an awful lot to learn. It is not to blow my own sizable trumpet that I say I can pull out of my ass with about 90 seconds thought a better script than a well-paid Disney hack. It is rather to condemn the well-paid Disney hack, because these rewrites are just meeting a basic level of quality, one that doesn't rely on nigh unquantifiable levels of luck and stupidity in order to function, and one that actually allows scenes to be driven by basic mechanics and character beats. This should be the norm. It should be the absolute least we can expect from a Star Wars show with a $180 million budget. And yet, in the event, it is so far above what we've come to expect from a Star Wars production, we would now be surprised to see it happen. Anyhow, the show continues, and so naturally the stupidity follows suit. We jump back to Coruscant. We have absolutely no idea how much time has passed, but we can assume it isn't very much, because while all of this is occurring, Occupational Safety and Health Administration is just asleep on the crashed ship. At some point in the intervening, the Jedi have learned of the crashed prison ship, flown all the way out to where it is, located, tracked down, and retrieved all of the escape pods with the other prisoners, flown them all the way back to Coruscant for interrogation, but despite those escape pods still being in the vicinity of one very obvious planet, at no point have the Jedi thought it might be worth going to that planet to look for the crashed ship, even though the one prisoner they actually give a shit about is unaccounted for. We now meet Padawan Jackie Lon, played by Daphne Keane. She goes to find Master Squid Game and interrupts him as he's standing there looking at a hollow image of Occupational Safety and Health Administration that he keeps in his pocket. Now, this is what you might call convenient, but I don't think it's unforgivable. Much will depend on what we go on to learn about his relationship with Occupational Safety and Health Administration, but the first couple of episodes at least convey that he feels guilt at what became of her and some fairly strong sense of failure on her part. And if the subsequent episodes do a good enough job of showing why this should be so uniquely and acutely felt, then it's not ridiculous that he might keep a little hollow image of her in his pocket. Either that or it's his wank bank and that's why she left. I should say, I don't hate Jackie as a character either. She's introduced to us as a bit of an autistic stickler for the rules herself, as she asks Squid Game why he should be looking at pictures of his former Padawan, before embarking on a recitation of the rote rules around sentimentality that everybody is familiar with.
Permission to speak freely, Master Sol?
You may.
Why do you keep old hollows of your former Padawan? This pastime encourages sentimentality and nostalgia.
But she's shown to be receptive to his more nuanced take on them, which is really a paraphrasing of Santayana's well-known aphorism, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
And both of these emotions can lead to...
Our memories are lessons. If we don't meditate on the past,
we're doomed to repeat it.
These two demonstrate a not terrible relationship across the first couple of episodes. She is dutiful and eager to impress. He is subtly unorthodox, and she pays more attention to his teachings than the strict wording of the Jedi Code, unlike Yord. These three, plus Occupational Safety and Health Administration, are shortly to team up, but I'll punctuate all the relentless negativity here by saying that there is a great deal of potential in this core cast. It has a bit of the feeling of a Dungeons & Dragons party, with four reasonably distinct but complementary character types, which actually means, though again for the moment just in potentia, there is more variety in the Jedi here than we are used to seeing. One of the great problems with the prequels, after all, is how monolithically stoic and aloof the Jedi are, such that they barely resemble characters in their own right and are very hard to distinguish, much less sympathize with, which in turn makes it less impactful when Creamy Sheev Order 66s them into oblivion. We mourn the death of an idea and an ideal in Revenge of the Sith, much more than we mourn, say, Ki-Adi-Mundi and Plo Koon as individuals. Whereas here, we have the germs of individual humanistic character to Squid Game, Jecki, and Yord. If anything, the character who emerges least formed out of these first 2 episodes is Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which is very far from ideal when she's supposed to be the protagonist, but at least interesting things are happening around her. Down in the interrogation room that the Jedi Temple just now has, I guess because they are the police in this show, the captured crims are trying to pin the blame for the whole escapade on Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Green Bean knows that the prison ship went down over one specific planet, and she knows that Occupational Safety and Health Administration wasn't found among the survivors, but she glosses over the fact that nobody has bothered actually tracing the wreckage of the ship to find it. Master Squid Game uses the Force to cure Mad Cat of his mental illness and asks him what happened, which is a tremendously powerful ability that I am sure we will never ever see again. As a scene, it ranks in silliness alongside that Wonder Woman lasso of truth scene in the Justice League Snyder Cut. Remember the one?
Now, who are you? We're a small group of reactionary terrorists.
The silliness there being that the lasso of truth is compelling the guy to speak in meta. Why the fuck would he, in his innermost thoughts, think of himself as a reactionary terrorist? That is just dumb, Zach, you hack. Well, here something very similar happens.
What happened to the young woman?
She helped me, and I betrayed her and took the last escape pod.
I don't think this guy would have been aware that he was betraying Occupational Safety and Health Administration. He was fucking mad, after all. Those thoughts would never have formed in his little head. They didn't even have time to form. He went nuts as soon as the psychic facehugger was off him and ran straight to the escape pod. I didn't get the impression he was consciously betraying someone who he recognized as having helped him, because that impression was never given, because that is not what happened. The Force cannot compel people to gain meta-awareness, Leslie, any more than the lasso of truth should be able to. Just have the guy confess to attacking her and stealing the last escape pod, since that's the absolute most his mad inner life could have conceptualized at the time. Green Bean then says the Republic sent probe droids to scour the wrecked ship, which is going to make it slightly odd that we never ever see any probe droids down there, and they are never mentioned ever again, and that no probe droid picked up the one very obvious life sign that is one very obviously alive woman. There is a chance, of course, that this is all a big conspiracy, and they deliberately left her to die. Maybe they ordered that she be left alone on an incredibly vulnerable prison ship, hoping that she might crash land on a planet, and they will just leave her there and abandon her. Maybe they want her out of the picture because of some deep dark secret. But I don't think that's the case, because if that was the case, they could have just done this at any point before the plot even started. So fuck that, no, it's just bad writing. This scene is really just the narrative excuse to send Squid Game off looking for her himself, which would have happened anyway had we gone with the halfway competent version of the script I spitballed earlier. He asked for permission to go and search the wreck, because he believes that Occupational Safety and Health Administration might still be alive. Green Bean says no, he is too valuable, he is needed on Coruscant. She cannot afford to lose him to a field mission. For some reason. I guess not everyone can spout pseudo-profound word goo about the Force at small children, but Squid Game says he needs to take accountability for his failure. So she says, okay, sure, you can go. Oh, and you can take a whole team with you. So sending one Jedi Master, no, that was too costly. But sending that Jedi Master with a team of Jedi, that's absolutely fine. Redrafting, Leslie. Redrafting is good. It's what you paid for. It's your friend. Give it a go sometime. Master Squid Game and Jackie go to pick up Yord. Jackie doesn't think much of Yord, and nor do I, for what it's worth.
But we need backup.
Is it Yord?
What's wrong with Yord?
Nothing. No, he's Yord.
But that is all in service of the D&D party feel.
Here's what I'll say. I did do a couple of RPG campaigns during COVID with my friends on Zoom, and there are a couple of characters from those campaigns that may or may not be in the show, so there's a little bit of that.
Yord is the muscle with minimal intelligence, honest, simple, well-meaning, strong, and a bit dense. Jackie is the younger, smaller, weaker, more bookish type, with few if any points in strength, but many more in intelligence, while Squid Game is the higher level character with good all-round stats and a high wisdom score to boot. I have heard people complain along the usual lines, young girl puts man down, typical woke bullshit. I do not agree in this instance, because I don't believe in holding the flaws of one show against another show. The pattern is certainly worthy of note when we are discussing the meta, but the trope is to be judged on its individual application, and in this instance, from what we have seen so far of the show, its use actually helps rather than hinders, as it gives us bare bones character variety. If Jackie turns out to be a better all-round fighter as well, who outmuscles opponents the designated muscle character cannot, then yeah, that will be worthy of criticism. But until we get there, I'm not going to criticize it. Yord apologizes to Squid Game for not bringing Occupational Safety and Health Administration in himself, which is honestly Leslie Headland's fault, not his, because she wrote it that way, not him. Jackie tells him to get dressed and they fly off. Back in the crashed ship, we've now abandoned quality control pretty much entirely. So we get our first dream sequence, and it contains all the plot necessary information Leslie couldn't be bothered working into the script like a functioning adult. Occupational Safety and Health Administration wakes up on the floor of the ship where she sees a small, mysterious robed figure walking away from her. She follows this child outside, where it turns around and reveals itself to be Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or rather, her twin sister, Fannie Mae, a hallucinated, younger version of Fannie Mae, the assassin. And look, they have the exact same hairstyle. Both of them, on opposite journeys, on opposite sides of the galaxy, have kept the exact same hairstyle all this time. Because if anything at all had changed about their appearance, a battle scar, a tattoo, a change in stylist, then I guess the misdirect wouldn't have worked. How very convenient. The dream then transports them to their home planet of Brandok, where the forest is on fire. And while running away, Fannie Mae speaks cryptically of things that will probably recur in some horrific ways later.
You're with me, I'm with you. Always one, but born as two. As above sits the stars, and below lies the sea. I give you you,
and you give me me.
Occupational Safety and Health Administration herself becomes a small child and then just flat out tells the audience that she thought her sister was dead and asks her whether she killed Trinity.
Did you kill Indara? Yes.
So baby May can tell the audience that yes, she did. And then she pulls out the demon eyes and tells us she's going to kill all of the Jedi.
I will kill them all.
And that's the end of the dream sequence. Occupational Safety and Health Administration wakes up for real.
Lazy.
Ugh, oh my god. This is one of those things that might have been at least partly redeemed by proper setup, which is why I went all Carl Jung earlier and stressed the use of proper dream sequences. Yeah, he just made that shit up as he went along too, but people seem to like it. You can't just spawn in random dream children to state a plot twist to the audience. As far as we know, this is the first time Occupational Safety and Health Administration has ever dreamed about Fannie Mae, and this is how she reacted?
May, is it really you? Yes. I thought you were dead.
And solving a murder mystery plot in a dream is the height of boringness. Now, yeah, I mean, it hasn't technically solved it for the other characters in the show. They still think it was Occupational Safety and Health Administration, though given how quickly and with what staggering lack of fucks that thread gets resolved in episode 2, this is really just a case of Leslie running out of time in her script and having no idea how to resolve an investigation she insisted on having. I guarantee you, if I insisted on having an investigation, say, into how Leslie Headland got put in charge of a Star Wars show, it would damn well not be resolved in a dream sequence. A courtroom, perhaps, but certainly not a dream. And it's not even as though Occupational Safety and Health Administration and Fannie Mae have established some sort of connection with each other through the Force, because when we rejoin Fannie Mae in episode 2, she has no idea that Occupational Safety and Health Administration is alive. Oh yeah, by the way, both twins think the other one is dead, somehow. I guess we'll get answers in a later episode.
You assume too much.
I never said they'd be good. The vibe they were clearly going for here is the cave from Empire Strikes Back. But that example is instructive because it shows how terrible and bad and lazy the Acolyte's version is. No words are exchanged between Luke and his dream ego. At no point does any character involved, not Luke, not Yoda, not Dream Luke, not Dream Vader, tell you overtly what that scene is about and what it is supposed to mean. Luke doesn't break Dream Vader's mask to encounter a child with demon eyes who says, "Fuck me, Jesus, fuck me," or, "This is a metaphor for the darkness within you," because that is entirely unnecessary. The context is its own explanation. Yoda's training leads up to it. His cautionary warning that all that is in the cave is what you take in with you. These things make it abundantly clear what the lesson is. In other words, the setup provides the explanation, and you've learned the lesson before you've even seen it. If Empire were as hackily written as the Acolyte, Luke would have gone in there, met a dream version of Vader, and Dream Vader would have said, "Oh, by the way, Luke, I am your father, and I'm going to try and turn you to the dark side." If you ever find yourself, I can't believe I'm saying this, if you ever find yourself solving a mystery that you began writing with a random disconnected dream sequence, you should burn your manuscript and consider another hobby. Or you should pitch a show to Kathy, because she'll probably give you $180 million and tell you to turn it into a show about space lesbians. So Occupational Safety and Health Administration wakes up for real this time, hyperventilating. She has a quick chat with Pip and tells him, "You wouldn't believe what I just saw." No, I can't quite believe it either. This is what has become of Star Wars. Over in hyperspace, the show kind of forgets that Jackie already knows who Occupational Safety and Health Administration is.
Why do you keep old hollows of your former Padawan?
Sometime later.
How well do you know this former Padawan?
Sometime later.
She had a sister. It's not in her file.
This is the scene I mentioned way back near the top, by the way. A conversation between Squid Game and his new Padawan that provides ample opportunity for diegetic exposition about Occupational Safety and Health Administration. It hasn't got off to the best start, admittedly, with one character forgetting that she's heard of her before, but you know, at least the scene is being used for mostly its proper purpose. Squid Game explains that he was on Occupational Safety and Health Administration's homeworld 16 years ago, and her sister started a fire that wiped out her whole family, leaving Occupational Safety and Health Administration as the sole survivor. Then Squid Game took her as his Padawan. That is all well and good. Then things start to go a little bit wrong again. Squid Game says that Occupational Safety and Health Administration was a twin. Yord says he didn't know this, and Jackie says it's not in her file, which, wait, you're telling me this scene began with her not knowing something that she clearly already knew? Because Leslie couldn't think of another way to start this line of inquiry? That's, wow. To be clear, the rest of the exchange actually helps Jackie's character. By saying it's not in her file, it furthers her characterization as the bookish, intelligent, inquisitive one. She has done her research and on her own initiative. It's just kind of shocking that we had to forget that for 5 seconds in order to get the conversation going to begin with. We also learn that Fannie Mae isn't mentioned in Occupational Safety and Health Administration's files, which, well...
You lost your entire family. Your mother's, your sister.
Sometime later.
I didn't know Osha was a twin.
I mean, something was in the file, wasn't it? The mothers were in the file. The whole family was in the file. Did she have brothers as well? She certainly doesn't have a father. So what's the family he's referring to if it's not the sister that isn't in the file? Anyway, Squid Game is being quite cagey about all of this, which I like. We're building a sense of mystery, quite possibly shame about the Jedi's involvement in events 16 years ago. But it would be so much better if characters stopped forgetting things they already know to make it happen. Squid Game insists that Fannie Mae is dead.
Do you think that...
No. May is dead.
Sometime later.
May is alive.
I believe you.
And that he saw her die. The ship alerts them that they've arrived at planet Garlic or wherever the fuck we are, but Squid Game is clearly still troubled. Speaking of characters forgetting things they already know and have already said, you remember when Occupational Safety and Health Administration said earlier that she didn't want to escape with the criminals because she had faith in the Jedi Order?
Yes. I have faith in the Jedi.
Well, at some point, she seems to have changed her mind about this, because when she sees a ship coming into land, she runs off. Squid Game senses her presence and the Jedi follow, tracing her to a cave, using the Force, obviously, because just following the footsteps she leaves in the snow is boring and old-fashioned, I guess. Yord pulls out his lightsaber in the cave.
A Jedi doesn't pull her weapon unless prepared to kill.
Yeah, let's just fuck that to one side for a minute. And then there is a slightly janky cut. Look here. Squid Game is in front, looking all urgent. Then we cut, and now Yord is in the lead. I'm, unfortunately not sure that Leslie has much of a mind for visual storytelling, but either one of these would have worked if only they'd stuck with it consistently. Yord behind with his lightsaber out suggests caution, meaning Squid Game unarmed and out in front is throwing caution to the wind, suggesting he is desperate to find his old Padawan, and that desperation is overriding any doubts or insecurities. Or, if Yord is at the front with his lightsaber out, well, then that emphasizes his role as guardian of the group. I think yellow lightsabers indicate Jedi Guardians anyway, and his willingness to assert himself in dangerous situations to protect others, while Squid Game being behind him would convey his willingness to trust his younger Jedi companions, and perhaps also some doubt and uncertainty as to his old apprentice's nature. As I say, either would work. What you don't want to do is start with one, cut, then switch to the other, because that just kind of suggests you don't have a clue what's going on and you don't know what you're doing and you don't really care. Occupational Safety and Health Administration reaches the end of the cave. But oh no, it's a sheer cliff face. She has nowhere to go. The Jedi come up behind her, and again, but she should be happy to see them, right? It's what she said on the prison ship. She said she has faith in the Jedi. She was happy to remain a prisoner, trusting in them. So why is she backing away now? Why is she walking backwards toward a cliff edge she knows is there? Why is she accidentally yeeting herself off a cliff? Oh, never mind. The Force can suspend people in midair now. That's fine. Just makes her look like a bit of a tit, that's all. Squid Game lifts her back to safety. She tells him Fannie Mae is still alive because she fucking dreamed it. Jesus Christ. And he says he believes her. He tells the other Jedi to stand down, that there is no need for restraints and such. And that's it. Oh, except of course that we seem to have got to the end of the episode without an especially strong hook for the next one, so for some fucking reason, they decided to tack this god-awful scene on at the end. I've already played it, we don't need to dwell on it too long, other than to stress, again, how hilarious it is that a villain in a mask is waving a lightsaber around for no reason while telling someone who just got finished killing a Jedi with a steel knife that you cannot kill Jedi with steel or with weapons generally. Honestly, given this scene has no bearing on anything at all we've just seen, and given it has no bearing on anything in the next episode either, Fannie Mae didn't accomplish anything by going there, she doesn't come back with anything, there's been no change in anybody's circumstances. I really genuinely wouldn't be surprised to learn that they added it last minute because the test screening said that the ending was too boring. Speaking of the ending though, that's it. That is it for episode 1. Being as fair as I possibly can be, there are some genuinely promising ideas here, and I want to reiterate that because it is easy just to shit on Star Wars these days. I would rather be harsh yet fair. There are interesting parts to this episode. The setting, the idea of these star-crossed sisters, the Jedi's involvement in something to do with their origin that has given one cause to hate them with murderous passion. Squid Game is an intriguing character, and his relationship with Jackie has a lot of promise, as does the general makeup of the Jedi Party. Squid Game, Jackie, Yord, and now Occupational Safety and Health Administration. The problem is, though, that most of these things are interesting ideas, yet whenever the script attempts to actualize them, to do anything with them, it falls into rank incompetence. Just sheer incomprehensible stupidity even. The kind of thing that makes you wonder how quality control in scripting is deemed too much work for a show with a $180 million budget. Where much of that money has gone is likewise a complete mystery. If there aren't some huge set pieces in later episodes, I cannot think what they've spent it on. There are bits of the episode so far that look alright. I wouldn't say anything looks exceptional. There are some known-ish actors, but no massive A-listers. So I don't know where the money's gone. Shows and movies with a 10th of that budget anyway, hello Godzilla -1, transcend this show in terms of artistic quality. They really should be instructive. You do not have to spend this much money to create quality content, and that is what Star Wars fans are crying out for. Not flashy visuals, not big-name stars, just solid, well-told stories with believable characters and stakes worth caring about. I will say, I do not think that the Acolyte has completely trashed every single one of these prospects, but you do get that nasty sinking feeling that that's just because it hasn't got around to it yet. The essential Writing 101 stuff seems well beyond its capabilities, meaning that whatever promise remains after episode 1 likely will not survive its first encounter with reality. But that is all for now. Toodaloo.